On March 22, 2024, Chicago Alderman Byron Sigcho-Lopez appeared at a protest with a radical group called Behind Enemy Lines. In front of him, a burned American flag. Behind him, a banner reading "Cancel the DNC." The Democratic National Convention was just 5 months away, and Sigcho-Lopez did not want it in his city. But Sigcho-Lopez himself is a Democrat. Why is he so opposed to his own party coming to his city? And what could this kind of opposition mean for a host city that's no stranger to tensions boiling over? Winning your party's national convention in an election year should be an honor. You're literally making history. But for Chicago, it hasn't always been that simple. When the city hosted the Democratic National Convention in 1968, things went off the rails. And the parallels between that year and this year have only gotten more alarming as the election draws near. To truly understand the environment the delegates will be going into for this increasingly contentious convention, you have to understand just how much has changed in Chicago in the past year. And there's a lot to go over. Long before anyone flubbed a debate, got shot at, or dropped out of the race, the host city was facing its own issues around the DNC. I'll let you make your own predictions about where that could lead, but first, let's take a look at how we got here. Welcome to Chicago. Chicago was an unexpected choice for the DNC host city. For the past 2 decades, major parties have only held their conventions in battleground states, hoping to generate hype and push critical voters to the polls. But Chicago hasn't elected a Republican for mayor in nearly a century. Then Mayor Lori Lightfoot got around this by pitching the city as representative of the whole Midwest, especially as a middle ground between 2 swing states, Wisconsin and Michigan. The other draw was her labor loyalty. Lightfoot could promise many high-quality hotel rooms and guarantee their staffs were unionized. Not so with runners-up New York and Atlanta. In fact, labor leaders in Georgia urged Democrats to drop the Atlanta bid because of their non-union hotels. Suddenly, Chicago had a real shot at 2024. If it panned out, the bid would be a major victory for Lightfoot. Her good relationship with several people planning the event made it likely she would play a prominent role in the convention itself. And then,
regardless of tonight's outcome, we fought the right fights and we put this city on a better path.
Just a few months before the winning bid was announced, the candidate responsible for putting it together was out of the running for mayor, and the winner would not turn out to be exactly what convention organizers needed. Mayor Brandon Johnson is a former union lobbyist and a newcomer to public office. While his ideology was as solidly left as his party could have hoped for, his inexperience quickly led to missteps. By just 6 months in office, his job approval dropped to 28%, the lowest in Chicago history for a mayor's first year. This was the first sign that the DNC might regret its choice. Johnson-led Chicago became a punching bag for political pundits looking to discredit leftist policies. In fact, this started before he even took office. Barely a week after the runoff, a teen riot in the Loop ended with 2 teens shot and 15 people arrested. Johnson got pushback for his official statement, which said, quote, "It is not constructive to demonize youth." The statement also said he didn't condone violence, but at best that was received as mixed messaging, a bad look for a city already fighting a reputation of unchecked crime. Once in office, he followed this up with a scandal where 2 PR staffers said they were berated for not posting a photo op he wanted. He took a defensive tone in many of his press conferences, and at one point, following the shooting death of a Chicago police officer, he literally ran from the press.
Hey, Mayor, please wait. Mayor. Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, why do you have to run from us?
Mayor, we
why
just want to comment about the arrest last night in relation to Officer Westa.
By September, the Chicago Tribune editorial board had already called him out for a lack of transparency and even open hostility. But beyond his personality, 2 areas of Johnson's policy had the biggest impact on the city's relationship with the DNC: the migrant crisis and pro-Palestinian protests. Faced with more than 44,000 migrants flooding Chicago from the southern border, the city used police stations as de facto shelters. These quickly became overcrowded, violent, and unhealthy, with cases of measles and even tuberculosis. Migrants also crowded O'Hare Airport, hidden behind curtains in the terminals. And still, the city paid exorbitant prices to house overflow in private sites, for example, completely renting out this luxury Gold Coast hostel. Inexplicably, it was later discovered that around this time, Johnson's office also rejected offers from the Catholic diocese to use empty churches for free. As winter approached, Johnson's plan was to move migrants to camps of heated tents, but citizens hated this idea. Not only were they skeptical that a tent, even heated, would be sufficient against a Chicago winter, they also decried the locations proposed by the city. The suggested sites were in low-income, high-crime neighborhoods, and nearby residents hated that, accusing the city of carving away their already limited resources. Just months earlier, these neighborhoods were Johnson's own voter base. Now they turned against him on national television.
It is unfair to those that are coming in, and it's unfair to us that they're displacing in the Park District.
The plan ultimately fell apart in December when the last site still under consideration was found to be contaminated with toxic waste. By then, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker had quietly stepped in to take control of the city's overrun police stations. This was a relief for Chicago, but it strained the relationship between Pritzker and Johnson has been practically ostracized from state-level government ever since. This could pose a problem for convention organizers. Under Lightfoot, it was easy to picture a convention headlined by a mayor and a governor working side by side. Under Johnson, that vision is less likely. So the migrant crisis drove a wedge between Johnson and his voter base, but it wasn't the last major issue to cast a shadow on the upcoming convention. The bigger concern wouldn't come up till October 7th. Since the latest Hamas-Israel conflict erupted, major cities across America have seen disruptive protests from those who support the Palestinian cause. Chicago is no exception. Groups have blocked access to O'Hare Airport and taken over college campuses. Some public high school students also staged a walkout under the approving eyes of school administrators. This is where Sigcho-Lopez becomes important again, because this is the issue that caused him to protest the DNC in the first place. The public, including several aldermen, were infuriated by the burned flag, but although they debated it, the Chicago City Council ultimately refused to condemn his actions, as did Mayor Johnson and Governor Pritzker. That fact becomes way more surprising when you read some of the slogans the group had pertaining to the DNC. Make police bruises the back-to-school fashion, and make 2024 like 1968, which, if you don't know about 1968, we'll explain that one in part 2. What's more, you may be surprised to learn this, but the city of Chicago requires any protest group to apply for a permit ahead of time. Yet behind enemy lines and at least one other radical group have promised to show up whether their permits are approved or not. The city's whole argument for requiring permits is that it helps them prepare a public safety plan. Yet in the face of this defiance, officials are mum. Every single level of Chicago government has declined to comment on this declaration. This may be why Politico described Brandon Johnson as a rookie mayor who unabashedly sympathizes with protesters. The official rhetoric from Johnson and Police Chief Larry Snelling has been that CPD's goal is to protect those exercising their First Amendment rights, with Snelling adding that they won't go so far as to tolerate criminal activity. That said, the department has already walked back what little enforcement they committed to, with Snelling retracting their guidelines for mass arrests and instead banning the practice. It leaves attendees with little guidance for what they can expect if things get out of hand. So what'll it be for Chicago? Peace or unrest? The city is approaching this convention with a growing sense of unease. Residents have little confidence in local public safety at the moment, regardless of such a major political event. And watching protests in other cities has not been reassuring, from confrontations at a Biden rally in New York City or storming the DNC headquarters in Washington. But we're not done yet. Remember when the city first took on the event, all the way back under Lori Lightfoot, there was reason to believe the nomination itself would be relatively simple. After all, the party had an incumbent president with nobody running against him in the party. Nothing to worry about inside the United Center, right? How things have changed. There's a part 2 to this video series where we'll take a look at how the events of the past month have drastically changed expectations for the event, and we'll take a deep dive into how those changes closely echo another major event in Chicago's history, America's most infamous political convention in 1968. Stay tuned.